80%. And the moment the LGUs, let's not talk of Tacloban only, no? All the LGUs, once they present the completion of the 80% downloaded funds, then the remaining 20%, the balance will be downloaded to them. So, as I said earlier, numbers don't lie. It's all there.
Sir Pia from Rappler, I just want to expound on that, the question on that. You earlier mentioned that Tacloban was reporting below par performance, and you then linked it to the hijacking of Romualdez of the rehab efforts for his own political agenda. Can you mention any concrete projects that might have been slowed down or regressed because of him? Were there any instances of that happening?
He requested for funds to repair the City Hall, the public market, and the Ustream, the Civic Center. After he received the funds, he requested the funds to be realigned. The agreement between the ILG and the DPWH is that for repairs, the ILG will take care of it. And the ILG, through our recommendation to the President, agreed to just download the funds to the LGUs to fast-track the repair of the government centers. If he accepted and he submitted the requirements necessary for the downloading of the funds, then he might as well, he could have proceeded with the repair of the government centers. But after he accepted the funds, he requested that those funds be realigned. And he wanted to transfer the City Hall and the public market, I think, to another site. If that was the intention, he could have refused the downloaded funds and instead coordinated with the DPWH, because DPWH is in charge of constructing totally damaged government centers. That's the agreement. So that's one example of, you know, as you mentioned, hijacking the rehabilitation efforts. You know, we've been to so many areas, no? Yesterday, the other day, 3 days ago, we were all around the place, within the corridor. There was not a single protest rally in any other area except Tacloban. There are no issues. You know, we witnessed local government executives thanking or commemorating 1 year of Yolanda, thanking the national government, thanking the development partners, multilateral, bilateral. But in Tacloban, they commemorated the Yolanda anniversary by protest rallies, or with protest rallies. So that makes Tacloban, as I said earlier, sui generis. It is in a class of its own. And it is unfair for us observers, even foreign observers, to base their judgment on what's happening on the ground within the corridor on what's happening in Tacloban.
Sir, Maki Pulido po of GMA7. Sir, so is this an example of incompetence or politics?
Maki, please don't put words into my mouth, ano? Basta't ano lang, I'm throwing back the question to you, no? You be the judge. That's the gist of my presentation this morning. I gave you the facts, and it's up to you to make the judgment. It is not up to me to judge him as incompetent, to judge the others as efficient. I'm throwing back the question to you. You make the judgment based on what you heard and based on what you are observing right now as they happen.
Sir, follow up. Sir, this is a situation, and how are you taking
Please ask the others also. Can you address the...
basically, sir, because it's the Office of the Presidential Assistant for Rehabilitation and Recovery is taking care of this matter. What are you going to do with the situation in Tacloban, and how are you going to handle this?
We will continue to extend our hand of cooperation to the Mayor of Tacloban. We will not give up on Tacloban. Nobody will be left out in this rehabilitation efforts. But the local executives must do their share. Sabi ko nga, a handshake that is not met can reach but halfway. We're trying to extend whatever support we can. I'm sharing with you my experiences with the other local officials. Mayor Peltexon, for example, of Tanawan, he's with UNA. His political affiliation is with the Vice President. But, he kept on pestering us in the middle of the night, texting us, emailing, and he's getting, most of what his municipality. And that's the kind of attitude that we're looking for in local executives. Because, we're not omnipotent. We're not almighty to see everything that's happening on the ground. We have to be informed. Governor Shari Antan of Samar, she came to my office uninvited, without any appointment, and she told me, Mr. Senator, you're forgetting Samar. Nobody's attending to us. You're all focused on Tacloban, focused on Palo, everywhere else, but not Samar. And from that time on, support or assistance in many forms have been coming their way. The United Arab Emirates, I remember, came to our office. They had 10 million US dollars already in their possession. And they were asking us, where do you want us to put this? Because it's already in our hands. And I told them, please go to Samar. And they have signed the MOA, and they are implementing health and I think health sector and education sector. This is the kind of a local executive that we need. Proactive, aggressive, makulit. But, local executives who, there's an old saying, you cannot fight City Hall, especially Malacanang. When you need assistance for your constituents, you forget about your personal or political agenda. You think of your constituents. They're suffering. You set aside everything because we're dealing here with a calamity of, yung proportion, unprecedented eh. The strongest typhoon. So why are you advancing your own political agenda and setting aside the needs of your constituents?
Lady from the second row, please. About my question, I think you've touched on this topic in your speech about the land acquisition for building permanent homes. We're still encountering problems in acquiring land. You mentioned in the speech that you plan to build 1,252 permanent houses by the end of the year and 118,000 units by the end of next year. So does that mean, sir, we've identified lands for those units?
GM Chito is here, but at the outset, I'd like to inform you that they have already identified suitable sites for resettlement for more than 160,000 housing units. What is left is 40,000. And as we go on with the implementation or building houses, the 160,000 houses, then we continue to resettlement. The Vice President, as I had earlier requested him to do, is to lead the resettlement cluster. And
Sir, but the acquisition is still a problem. So we're still having a problem.
really.
Not anymore.
Okay.
Not anymore.
Okay, sir.
As Secretary Lacson mentioned, we are ready to put up the more than 100,000 units, and the land survey has been identified. Incidentally, it might help you to know that the President had issued Administrative Order number 44, and this is to streamline the process of issuance of permits. We've had a lot of problems of permits being taken from the local government units. So, issuance of permits, certifications, clearances, and licenses for housing and resettlement projects in Yolanda affected areas.
Since we're all displaced, then will be covered by those number of housing units.
That's right.
Just follow
In fact, if I may add, the resettlement cluster has already identified all the requirements for suitable sites for settlement in Tacloban. Tapos na lahat yung sa Tacloban. In other areas, yung 40,000, yung gap, scattered yon in other areas. But in Tacloban, so, I'd like to disabuse the minds of our people that Tacloban is being left out. No. We treat Tacloban in the same manner as we treat the other LGUs. Ito po si Chito eh.
Just for Tacloban alone, the requirement of houses that we need to build to relocate the families in the unsafe areas is about 14,000. 12,000 of which are actually identified, and we have bidded and we have awarded already contracts. It's all ongoing. Last Saturday, in fact, we awarded some units already, and the remaining 2,000 we're waiting for the LGU because they have identified additional 2,000 land for 2,000 families which are LGU owned, so that we can save money for government. So we promise to complete the project by 2015, the whole of Tacloban. No? So the whole of Tacloban will finish the 14,000 by 2015.
So when you say finished, they've completely built?
Completely built, yes.
So just a follow-up, on the relocation of families within the 40-meter danger zone, how confident are we that we're going to be able to accomplish it? Because I think the estimate from multilaterals is that there are 95,000 people in the danger zone.
There's no longer a policy on the 40-meter no-build zone.
Ah, okay, sir.
The very first person who raised a howl is the Secretary of Tourism.
All right.
He told us during a cabinet meeting, how can I build, or how can investors build a
There.
beach resort that's very far from the beach? So it's as simple as that. We have a policy decision defining no longer controlled unsafe, but low risk, moderate, and high risk zones. And the basis for identifying the three areas would be multi-hazard mapping. No? They conducted geohazard tests dealing with other forms of hazards, landslides. We may transfer them away from the coastline, but we may put them in high places, but that could be vulnerable to landslides. So it will defeat the purpose of building back better.
Sir, sorry, last na lang. On the 5,000, well, correct our figure if it's incorrect. There's still 5,000 people living in tents. Is that correct? And if yes,
Alam nyo,
why is that so? Thank you.
We're surprised because the last count nung huling cabinet meeting, the last cabinet meeting that we had, that was, I think, last week, si Secretary Jinky informed me that there were only 146. But before the anniversary, it grew in numbers. It became 500. We're surprised. Who built those tents? Only in Tacloban. Anyway, Sec Jinky is here.
Yes. The count of the families in tents, and this is in conjunction with the counting and validation of local government unit, DSWD, and the International Organization of Migration, as of June 2014, is 3,029 across the eastern seaboard of Samar all the way to Tacloban. As of October 30, I personally went. There were 120 in eastern Samar, which is in Giwan, and they were moved November 7 and 8 to the tent transitional shelter that we actually launched when the President was there, and a remaining 358 families. That's the report I was giving to Secretary Ping Lacson in Barangay San Jose, in the area of San Jose, Barangay 88, 89, 90. I was there October 30. I spoke with people. I spoke with the 3 barangay captains. The way the shelter cluster of Tacloban City had arranged for moving them was in this manner. Barangay 88, International Organization of Migration, and DSWD will build the transitional shelters. Oxfam Green Mindanao will take care of Barangay 89 and 90. As of that time, 73 families from Barangay 88 were going to be moved the following week. I was there October 30. So by this time, they're either in Tagpuro or in Calaca. 191 of Barangay 89 and 66 of Barangay 90 is supposed to be addressed by Oxfam Green Mindanao. Their transitional shelter was going to just move back, still in the same area, because they were able to rent a private property where they could build the transitional shelter. We were told that by November 30, they would be already in transitional shelters. I also indicated to the barangay captains that if that does not happen, we can come in and help. But as Secretary Ping Lacson indicated, we were surprised that that was October 30. I saw it for myself. The report is that there are 500. So I've asked my colleagues to go back, check whether that is the case.
Okay.
Okay, I'm very happy to hear the statement on this 40 meter in the no-build zone, right? I think this is just a clarification. And I think we are of the same view with the government that the resettlement area should be determined based on risk assessment, right? And I was in Barangay 88 yesterday, right? And I saw that how the barangay captain and their community members use these hazard maps, to decide, whether to relocate or not. I think they have accepted totally that they needed to relocate because they live right in the danger zone. Okay, right? It's not sustainable, right? And this goes back to the point that JICA advisor mentioned earlier, that investing $1 now will reduce potential recovery costs of $7 in the future, right? This is precisely the resilient development that we sort of advocate. Okay, right? Thank you.
We have a question from Ms. Kathy of PTV4.
Yes, this question is for Dr. Takea from JICA. Earlier, President Aquino said he's proposing the relocation of the airport in Tacloban to Palolete. But in another interview, Mayor Romualdez denied that JICA made a study that Tacloban Airport is not fit anymore to be in that location, and that there needs to be a transfer of the airport. Did JICA really make this study, or if so, what are the findings, sir?
Okay. Thank you very much. Good question. We made the hazard analysis. So just we proposed hazard mapping to the government, and finally government will decide. So we JICA do not decide to relocate or remain there, but there's if we asked how to remain there, what the best solution? So we can set up some for the Sendai airport after the Tohoku tsunami. We did not relocate the airport. Just make the tsunami resilient terminal building, or make some ring dike or something like that. And also some portion which is very vulnerable, Hiroshima Airport, we relocated completely to the highland side. This is not from the earthquake, but the tsunami, but for the flooding. So, as I mentioned in my presentation, it depends on the civil minimum of each countries. So this kind of Yolanda return period is how long, 100 years or 200 years? You prepare for the 200 years, relocate it, or prepare for the most frequent low, high frequency, small hazard to prepare and stay there. And once happened, if you do not relocate, the building can be more, storm surge resilient. For example, every important equipment is located as a second storage floor, as I shown in the Ise Bay case. So there's a many selection. So that selection is depends on each consensus between the government and internally government and with the local government. It depends on the consensus. So this is my answer.
So just to follow up, sir, to clarify, so it is an option based on your study to relocate or to make it better?
No, we just make the hazard mapping, and from hazard mapping to the future, that is we did not any propose. It just depends on the consensus.
This is related to your question. No? The president, if you recall, in Giwan made an announcement that the government is finalizing a plan to do a dike that will protect Tacloban, Palo, and Tanawan against a storm surge of as high as 4 meters. This is a long discussion that we've been having with the JICA consultants, and we have decided, and the President has approved the construction of a Tacloban, Palo, and Tanawan dike. Now, we're just determining the final alignment of that dike, whether we should put it on an existing road or go to a shoreline or an existing seawall. No? So the estimated length of that dike is about 27 or so kilometers, and that should protect against, as was being explained earlier, against a 50-year return flood data. If you recall, Yolanda was a 100-year return data, no, or return period. If we do that, we might have to raise that dike a little bit more. But after studying whether it is a 100 or a 50-year dike or return period, the consultants and DPWH agreed to do a 50-year, which means if another Yolanda happens, there will still be flooding, but it will no longer be life-threatening. No. In other words, half meter, it can be, you reduce the risk already significantly. So as I mentioned, the President has already announced this, and we're now just finalizing because the President wants us to start a portion of this dike in Tacloban as soon as possible. And that's why we were there discussing until Saturday morning with the JICA consultants, and I'm pressing them to come up with the final design of the dike that we need to start constructing as soon as possible. We already got an initial approval to start the dike with a funding of 4.6 billion pesos. So again, we're taking the cue that an investment of risk reduction measure is going to save $7 as against $1 investment in recovery efforts. No? So we're taking that at heart. We have to invest to protect Tacloban, Palo, and Tanawan against another storm surge of this Yolanda magnitude.
Yes, the lady from the first row.
Sir, Secretary Lacson, I'm Dana Batnag from GG Press. Earlier you mentioned about finding substandard materials and then having raids conducted, and so some substandard materials were confiscated. Have charges been filed, and were there any local government officials that were also charged?
Charges have been filed against the traders. As regards substandard materials finding their way in stores, in hardwares, and even all the way to the Yolanda corridor, no local government official is involved. So charges have been filed against the traders only.
Because, sir, the first reports were that the substandard materials were also used in bank houses, and those would be government projects.
Yes, I requested the CIDG, the PNP, to conduct the investigation. Indeed, substandard yung materials.
Did any government official inspect the materials before they were used?
We don't know that. In the absence of evidence, we could not file charges against those people. But I understand from the Secretary Singson that they deferred or even refused to pay the contractors. And I think that's punishment enough. But we sort of nip it in the bud, so to speak. Because had we not exposed the use of substandard construction materials in those bank houses, where we're only talking of 836,000 pesos per bank house unit, then we'll be dealing with a bigger problem when we talk of 167.8 billion pesos. I always say this, a mere 1% leakage in the 67.8 will already translate into 1.67 billion pesos in taxpayers' money. So there's a weakness in the law, and I propose legislation because in the Government Procurement Act, RA 9184, there's a provision there giving the contractors 90 days to make amends, to correct the mistakes. And to me, that's encouraging them to, construct with defects, because if they get away with it, then fine, they get bigger profits. If they are found out, then they have 90 days. So I propose a legislation, a legislative measure to the Senate and to the House to amend or delete that particular provision, so they won't have any more flexibility or leeway to use substandard materials or construct with defects. Anyway, Secretary Singson can give you more details.
Yeah, concerning the bunk houses, the reason given to us was that we push the immediate construction of the bunk houses, so they made use of what was available in the market. No, but nonetheless, we never paid any substandard material, no, or any bunk house using substandard material. They had to rectify and remove the defective material. That was the only time that we could pay. In fact, some of them just decided to donate the bunk houses after the materials were replaced. No, so in the government was not cheated in the sense that we did not pay for any bunk house that did not meet these specifications.
Secretary Singson, were these traders blacklisted from the government, not just the DPWH, but the government list?
Contractors.
Oh, yeah, contractors. Sorry.
We're trying to understand. We were trying to be more understanding of the situation. We had to bring in these contractors from outside the region. If you remember, for a long, long time, even up to now, we're still having difficulty getting contractors from the region. We had to bring in contractors from outside the Yolanda affected regions.
Okay, I just want to clarify. There was a need to build right away, so they used what was available in the market. When they used those materials, did they know it was substandard?
Yes, because we gave them specifications.
So they used substandard materials.
That's correct.
And they knew it.
That's correct.
Okay. Secretary Lacson, so when you said that without evidence you cannot file charges, that means that the police did not find any evidence linking any local government officials, particularly the city engineers who had to review the materials, to the anomaly.
We were hoping that a contractor would blow the whistle. Nobody did. And so we're short in evidence.
But with
I would have wanted to charge the politician involved. In fact, that was 3 days right after my appointment. We went to Giwan and then did some ocular inspection. And right away, we noticed, we don't need to be rocket scientists or engineers to notice the substandard materials. Even the coco lumber that was used, and coco lumber at the time, sobrang abundant in the area. And yet, pati yung coco lumber substandard. And the first thing I did was to approach Secretary Singson. We were then, I think, December 18. December 18 during the Ray presentation to the ambassadors. And I told Secretary Singson, I trust in your integrity. I will have to tell you this. We discovered something.
So it was clear that the materials were substandard.
Yes.
And these were
The
approved
CIDG
by the...
did an investigation report. They submitted to us. The 836,000 pesos worth of bunk houses, the contractor or contractors spent only 500,000.
But the local government officials approved it, knowing that...
No, it's not the local government officials.
They don't have to okay because it's national government agency that's building it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Sige.
I am all for transparency and accountability. And yes, we need to account. In November and December, there were so many people in makeshift houses and in tents. And the idea was to put them in a more protective place. And that's where I think the rush, the standards. So LGUs at that point, national government na yung pumasok at that point because the LGUs were doing many other things trying to do relief work. So I think, as Secretary Lacson said, because of the quick action, whatever the intention was, it was stopped. And immediately they knew that they cannot do any bad shenanigans in the area.
Anyway, normally I shouldn't get into these complex issues, but I cannot resist the temptation to say that as the development organizations, UN, UNDP, as agency, including ADB, who's here, and the World Bank, okay, we deal with these kind of issues every day, okay, and this is a normal situation where you have, contractual disputes because of, materials used, because of the company didn't meet the terms of the contract. So I think there's a fact that we have this discussion, and I'm encouraged, that. I think let's hope that with the scrutiny of media, the NGOs and so forth, we avoid this from happening. Right? But this is just really happening. It's not just here, and we have a very stringent procedures. Okay, when it comes to charges, right? Because you needed to review facts, you needed to notify the people who are going to charge that you are found to have committed this offense. Right? Give them opportunity to defend. Then we have a committee, procurement committee, to review these cases. Then put them on. So we needed to follow procedures essentially. Also, I hope I'm not siding with anyone per se. But anyway, right? Thank you.
Any more questions? Yes, please. Gentleman on the fourth row. Also, I'd like to mention that we have here DTI Undersecretary Zenny Maglaya, who can answer questions related to livelihood.
Sorry, I'd just like to go back to the issue in Tacloban, Secretary Lacson. If Mayor Romualdez or any other local official was a problem in terms of rehabilitating, was there any effort to point out to them in their face or perhaps confront them on these matters? Was there any national official who actually spoke to them and then try to sort the problems out?
I already did. When we discovered that they're, conducting rallies from as far as Samar, areas that were not hit by Yolanda, they were transporting the rallies to Tacloban. And when I found out that the truck bus being used to ferry those rallies belonged to them, in their faces, I told them, FYI, plate number so-and-so. After, dropping off the rallyists, the truck bus was seen parking inside your compound. And they did reply to my SMS. They said, next time we'll be more circumspect.
How did you take it, Secretary?
Well, how did I take it? That should be the question.
What would be the impact in the future? As you said, you would continue to reach out to
Yes, we'll
Tacloban
continue to reach out
despite
because
this.
after all, we're dealing here with the calamity. We're dealing here with people who are suffering. And, when I got appointed, the first policy that I had in mind is a policy of inclusion. But, again, even without policy, I also have a message. Either you're in the way, you're with us or you're not with us. Something like that, Either, I forgot already what I told you earlier after my appointment. But it sounds something like that. Either you're with us or not with us. We need to extend our hand of cooperation. My job is to coordinate with all sectors.
Very quickly lang po kay Vice President, kasi we saw you, we covered your visit to Mayor Romualdez just weeks or days after Yolanda. Have
2
you
days
made-
after.
2 days after. Have you spoken to him, perhaps reached out to him regarding this problem, sir?
I'd spoken with him, but not about the visit I made in Tacloban. In connection with Yolanda, I think I saw him because I brought the head of the World Scout, the King of Sweden, who donated as assistance to the victims.
Your thoughts on this, sir? Yung mga nire-raise po ngayon ni Secretary Lacson, sir.
You know, that's unfortunate. Darcy, if you see, there must always be respect to the local governments. That's part of decentralization. But here is an instance where, you know, the local government's already an obstacle. That's why it's rather unfortunate.
Thank you very much, sir.
The statement of Secretary Lacson before was either you're in or in the way.
Yes, that is. That's
Yes.
it. Thank you, Karen.
We have
Either
another
you're in or
question.
in the way.
Yes, we have another question from Ms. Pia Ranada of Rappler.
For Mr. Xiaolongshu, I just want to ask, sir, can you give suggestions on concrete ways that OPAR or the Philippine government can speed up recovery?
I think I've been here for only a few days. To say that I can give recommendations is challenging. But there are definitely international practices, that allows you to speed up, different procedures. In UNDP, for example, okay, I mean UN agencies or World Bank ADB, we all have special procedures for disaster response. Okay? We activate these special procedures when certain conditions are met. Right? So in normal conditions, this is not allowed. But when conditions warrant, then we activate these procedures. For example, in terms of recruiting staff, okay, we relax the time that's needed for advertisement. We shorten this significantly. Right? So in terms of procurement, again, we shorten the advertisement period significantly, and we organize special procurement panels for speeding things up, right? And there are many such procedures that I think we can review, and I think we would be very happy to offer ourselves, our capacity to support the government in its implementation of the program, if it is useful. I'm sure our development partners will also be willing to support the government.
To realign what you downloaded to him in order to move.
I did not download the budget. It's the DILG.
Yeah, the DILG
I have no
downloaded
implementing
to,
authority.
Yes, that the DHD downloaded to the mayor's office or Tacloban City. So I just wanted to ask, maybe was it because he wanted to change the venue of those buildings because of assessments? He realized that it's not safe for it to be in the current location, and if so, doesn't the national government, isn't your office or the DILG flexible enough to respond to these these assessments that baka kailangan nga i-move?
Yes, but why did he submit the program of work? Why did he request in the first place for monies to fund the repairs of the government centers? And then after getting the money, he would request for realignment. What's the motive? What's the purpose?
Sir, to clarify, the realignment was for what? To realign it
Construction of a new city hall.
to what?
If it's for the construction of a new city hall, then DPWH will implement. It's not the DILG. DILG will no longer download funds to the LGU because that's the agreement. We settled this during our cluster meetings.
So, sir, you're saying that he basically was changing his plans all the time. That's what made it difficult.
No, overnight.
Oh, okay.
No, the agreement with DILG, because we agreed that totally damaged structures, public market, municipal buildings, civic centers, if it will require a totally new structure, standardize the structures. We have the designs to take care using Build Back Better principle, upgraded design, but DPWH will be the one to implement, not the LGU. Okay? Now, if you ask for a repair, that money for repair will go to LGU. I don't want to just repair. We want new structures using the new designs. So now, the repair money was downloaded to the LGU, and now it is being required to, okay? If it is new, DPWH will undertake it. If it is repair, LGU will get the money. So all of a sudden, Many were requesting that we don't need total replacement. We just want repair money. Okay? Because that was going to be given to LGUs.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, we'll go by. Okay.
Sir Jeff
We'll
from
accommodate
ABS-CBN.
another question.
Excuse me.
Hi.
The only point I was trying to drive at when I mentioned the downloaded funds, because we keep on hearing Mayor Romualdez, telling media that that's not right, that is not correct, that's a lie, because we know for a fact, because we're in charge of consolidating all data, and we know that the city of Tacloban has so far received, not in cash, but in projects, programs, activities, a total amount of 6 billion pesos. Oh, yun. Meron pa. Ang total cash na nakakuha nila is, I think, 251 million. The bulk galing sa DILG. Meron din sa social services. I think meron din sa livelihood eh.
Yeah. We provided 35 million in cash for work. They still have to liquidate, and we also provided supplementary feeding, and we also provided livelihood. That's all given to the City Social Welfare and Development Office.
Secretary Lacson, just wanted to ask, so the money that was requested was already downloaded to Tacloban. Sir, and then Mayor Romualdez wanted to realign. So where's the money now, sir? I mean, what happened to it?
I have here in my notes,
Okay.
Ito, SMS sent to me by Secretary Rojas. Sabi niya, total project cost for Tacloban, 230.7 million, of which 184.6 already released. The unreleased balance is 20% withheld awaiting completion billing. 80% was released in one tranche to LGU as follows, meaning Tacloban, Civic Center, 12.9, City Hall, 116.9. And they released the funds upon the request of the mayor of the LGU. And that's the standard being followed for all LGUs. In fact, Tacloban received the highest amount. Yung iba nga, the biggest amount. So, when I heard that while he was being interviewed by media, saying that Tacloban has not received a single centavo, I cannot help but, why is that? So why is he saying that? What's the motive?
So, sir, the money has been used for what? For
I don't
repairs
know.
of-
He should have, because the other LGUs have already completed the repairs of the government centers. I don't know about Tacloban. Because he's requesting the funds to be realigned, I suppose he has not started.
So the funds are just floating.
I don't know. It's with him. Yeah, it's downloaded eh.
So we're not gonna check and make, in the interest of transparency,
We
if
will
we're gonna
check.
make it.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
We will check. Starting tomorrow, we'll check.
Okay, thank you, sir.
The gentleman at the third row, please.
Sir, to anyone. We've been hearing the mayor talking about these clamors and displeasure about the national government's services to the people of Tacloban for the whole year. And now you're telling us this story. Why is it only now that we hear about this side of the story?
Ngayon lang kami napuno siguro. That's my answer. We've been holding our punches all this time. But somehow you will reach the limit of your elastic limit, So
Yes. Ms. Maki, second row. The lady from the second row, please.
Good frame of the rehabilitation plan, and does it go beyond the limit of the president? Also, what are the key indicators for us to say that indeed the people has recovered from the disaster? Thank you.
Let me start so far as the housing is concerned. We are supposed to produce, as we had identified, the housing need would be 205,128. By next year, we expect to complete 117,000 and the balance of 80,000 by 2016. That's insofar as the housing is concerned.
As far as the infra is concerned, the dike will be the major structural intervention that we have to work on. And this will probably go beyond 2016. First of all, if we do decide to use the existing road as the main alignment, you can imagine an existing road in Tacloban being raised by 1 to 1.5 meter higher than the existing elevation. So that will require a lot of discussions with the stakeholders and lot owners that will be possibly be affected. So we're trying to meet just doing a seawall or raising the existing sea in these areas. So other than that, we're confident, well, we committed to the President that all projects that have been funded already will be completed by June 2015. No, 2015, all that has been funded so far. No. So that includes classrooms, health units, repairs, and so on. But we expect that there are some major infrastructure interventions that we are working with JICA. You know. The structures are designed so that they also become evacuation centers or completed within the year 2015. And we're talking of health stations, we're talking of school buildings. They're spread all over Leyte and Samar. It's not going to be concentrated in one location. So all the way to Giwan, Hernani, Palo, Tacloban, all the way to Tanawan. So there will be major structures that we are working with JICA that can also be used as what we refer to as resilient evacuation centers. In other words, they will have backup generators. They will also have potable water supply during and after a calamity.
For the social services, by the beginning of 2015, the beginning of school year 2015, all the necessary learning kits, computer packages, books that were destroyed, learning materials would have been completed and ready for use. For the healthcare, the continuation of support for maternal care will be provided. And let me just correct some numbers that have been put out in media in behalf of the Department of Health. There was a number that was being quoted of 115 or 116,000 mothers who are pregnant and have not been supported. I think this is something that DOH is correcting. This is 116,000 at the beginning of the count that was done in November, December 2013. And most of them have been assisted, have given birth, and are already at postnatal. However, there is an observation that there is a rise of pregnancy in the different areas of Samar Leyte in particular. And therefore, that's another number that's being monitored now and provided maternal health care through the different rural health units and the support of WHO and other UN agencies, UNFPA being one of them, and WHO. And at the same time, primary and essential medicines will also be provided by the end of 2014, which includes prenatal, postpartum, multiple micronutrient powders for 6 to 11 months and 12 to 23 months, and that is after breastfeeding. Also, there is going to be completion by the end of 2014, provision for preventive action on diarrhea by way of zinc supplementation. The emergency shelter assistance that will be given to all families that can build in safe zones will be completed by end of January 2015. that is for social services for the recovery and rehabilitation.
Can I just, maybe for the benefit of the media, no, let me give you specific numbers para maliwanag. Repaired station. 29 of these 112 have been completed and 59 are already ongoing repairs. No. For municipal halls, they targeted also 112, 34 have been completed and 64 are ongoing. For civic centers, they targeted 117 civic centers, 34 completed, 61 ongoing. No? So they are in various stages of completion. This is what I was saying, that all of this we are targeting to be completed by middle of next year.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. For the livelihood cluster, what we hope to see by the end of 2015 is all business restarts would have already be back in operation. So far, the number of affected MSMEs, fisher folks, and farmers assisted is 56% as of end of October. We hope to raise the number to about 70% before the end of the year, and hopefully before the end of the first semester next year, we will be able to do 100% of all affected farmers, fisher folks, and MSMEs. What we mean is that we would see production going for our MSMEs. Farmers and fisher folks would be back on their livelihood, as well as value adding of intercropping, whatever products that they will be planting. In the coconut areas, we hope to be able to process them for value adding for our farmers. The fish that is being caught now, the oysters, the milkfish, lapu-lapu, the submerged cages that are being done with the help of our development partners like JICA, is happening in Basay and in other places in Eastern Samar. So we hope now to see food processing, preservation, and value adding for our farmers and fisher folks. So this is really part of our livelihood cluster initiatives, and we hope to see more and more of the products in trade fairs, in a lot of our markets, not only here as well.
When we were preparing the CRRP, the comprehensive or the master plan, we looked at the pre-Yolanda demographics. The contribution of, or the output of the 14 provinces, 6 regions, 171 cities and municipalities, their share of GDP is 17.4%. Their agricultural output was at 26.8%. Industry, 16.7%. Services, 15.8%. The idea is to up all those numbers, because the platform or the goal of the president is to build back better. So we are not building back better if we will just go back to those numbers, or even come out short of the numbers of the pre-Yolanda numbers. No? So that is the aim, to do better than the numbers during the or the demographics before Yolanda.
If you don't mind, I just want to say that we talked a lot about infrastructure and so forth, but I'm very happy to hear that we focused those on social sectors and the productive sectors. And this government has spent a lot of money on conditional cash transfer, which we strongly support, because when we published the report 2014 on resilience, building resilience, and one of the recommendations is to strengthen social protection as a means of supporting resilience. And I saw one example in Palu yesterday when I visited a birthing place, a birthing station, right, which was built with international partners. But what impressed me is a pregnant woman who gave birth the day before and came in with a rickshaw and got reimbursement, right, for the cost of transportation, right. So that means you have built in the system, the resilience in the system that provides people with a better condition, so that they can reduce maternal mortality, right. So when we say building resilience, and it's not just about infrastructure, it's about the social system, social support as well. So, right. Thank you.
We have a question from Reuters, but we'd also like to announce that Undersecretary of the National Disaster Risk Reduction Management Council, Alex Palma, is also here to answer any questions. Sir, Secretary, since you discussed the economic impact of the region, is there also available data on the incidence of poverty in the affected areas? Because I think it was
Yes.
the International Labour Organization that estimated that the Haiyan would have, or I don't know if it was realized, would have driven 1.5 million people into poverty.
We have those data.
Yes, sir. May we know if that really happened,
Well,
if
we all
that
know
was
that-
realized, and what's the actual data on the ground right now? Thank you.
We all know that particularly Region 8, no, and particularly Samar, the two Samars, the poverty incidence there is really high, you know. Literacy rate is high compared to the national average. We have all those data, and those are included. The data are all included in the CRRP.
But sir, is the 1.5 correct? Did it actually, was that realized? Because that was their estimate.
The 1.5 million individuals
Yes.
that have fallen into poverty is correct, because the number of affected families is 1.4 million. 1,472,251. That's the affected families, and the displaced families is 918,261. That means those are totally damaged and partially damaged houses. So if you just multiply that by 5, that's about 1.5.
Thank you.
And what are we doing about it? It's exactly what Secretary Lacson had said, that we are addressing both the infrastructure needs and the social infrastructure that is needed to raise them out of poverty through investments, but also investments in the economic front, but ensuring that the social protection systems are strengthened. And if I may add, part of it is really, as OPAR had done under the leadership of Secretary Lacson, bottom up. So it's not just the local government unit, but citizens' participation. And I'd like to share that from November 2013, where we had ongoing community-driven development programs, in addition to the ADB that was given through the Japan Fund for Poverty Reduction and the World Bank, from November 2013 to September, there are 145 sub-project infrastructures, repair of classrooms, daycare, that had been completed through the support of the citizens themselves, cooperating with the local government unit and the donor community.
We have a statement from the UN Assistant Secretary General.
Sorry, I think it's very important to recognize that poverty cannot only be measured in income, in terms of income. Okay, poverty is a manifestation of deprivation. In our view, if you don't have access to health service or education and or electricity, sanitation, water, right, this is also a form of poverty. So when we talk about the poverty, we cannot just think about the income. In the international literature, let's show that 30% of the effect of poverty reduction comes from social sectors. Okay, right. So it's very important that we have social safety net that keeps people out of poverty, so they don't fall back into poverty. It's multidimensional effort. Okay.
Before we end, I would just like to pay tribute to a fine lady here who is leaving us, si Miss Luisa Carvalho. She's leaving us, but I'd like to just thank her on behalf of the Philippine government, on behalf of my office, because she was there every step of the way. Relief, humanitarian, all the way to rehabilitation and recovery. Luisa, thank you very much.
Okay. Last question, but
before we end,
oh, okay. Yeah. We have our
senior advisor from JICA who wants to give a final statement.
Yeah, not final, but I want one comment. I have many experience that once this has happened in some country, I must go there, and after 10 days after. So everywhere in the world, I visited and discussed with the government people and how to rebuild. So from my extensive experiences, Philippine central government, this member is doing very, how to say, high, based on the high discipline, high policy, high level philosophy compared to other countries. So it's a very dramatically, for my personal experience also, I feel very, how to say, respecting the government doing best effort. You can proud of this, I believe. And also build back as before is easy, very easy. So if you request quick response or quick recovery, these government people can do it. Build back as before, very easy to build. But still, there are challenges to the build back better, including not infrastructure, but the livelihood, everything, or structure of the economic, or structure of the local economic. They are thinking and try to their best to build back better. So I'm very happy to support and very proud of being involved in this kind of initiative. And also, you'd better to cheer up the government to how to say complete, but without any chair, they will do their best. But anyhow, I really want to say, it's a very nice initiative, effort, and shown by the government, I believe. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Inyo pong napapanood ang live feed mula po dito sa PICC kung saan katatapos lang pong ipinalabas ng Telebisyon ng Bayan ang press briefing na isinagawa matapos ang pagbubukas ng Multi-Stakeholders Policy Forum 1 year after Yolanda and the way forward. Idinitalye sa press briefing ni OPAR Secretary Ping Lacson ang umano'y pang-hijack ni Tacloban City Mayor Alfred Romualdez ng mga rehabilitation projects. Tinawag din ni Lacson na kasinungalingan ang paratang ni Romualdez na walang natatanggap na pondo mula sa national government ang kanilang lungsod. At nilinaw naman ni DPWH Secretary Rogelio Singson ang na binayaran na hindi binayaran ng pamahalaan ang mga contractors na gumamit ng substandard materials sa mga bunkhouse. Ayon naman kay Secretary Lacson, may mga kinasuhan ng mga contractor at supplier, ngunit walang nakitang link sa sino mang local government official, kaya't wala pang nakakasuhan sa mga ito. Nagbigay din ng update ang iba't ibang clusters ng OPAR, kasama na dito yung infrastructure, social services, resettlement at livelihood clusters sa kasalukuyang estado ng kanilang mga programa. Pero bago yan ay nagbukas nga itong Multi-Stakeholders Forum na inorganisa ng Office of the Presidential Advisor for Rehabilitation and Recovery, kung saan nagbigay ng kanyang talumpati si Secretary Panfilo Lacson patungkol sa estado ng iba't ibang mga rehabilitation programs na isinasagawa ng pamahalaan sa mga probinsya o sa iba pang lugar na naapektuhan ng bagyong Yolanda. Panuurin po natin ang naging talumpati ni Secretary Panfilo Lacson.
November 8, 2013 is a date we all want to forget, but which we must always remember. Typhoon Haiyan or Yolanda struck the Philippines. It is the strongest typhoon to make landfall in recorded human history. On the morning of November 9, the world awoke to see images of a global catastrophe. There were chaos, death, and devastation. 1 year after, we've seen changes. As we reflect on where we are a year after, there were criticisms and praises as to how the government responded. There have been conflicting views as to whether the recovery process has been fast or slow. Rather than convince you with words, my years of experience in law enforcement has taught me to rely on the evidence before me. I will give you a report on how much we've accomplished to date. I will also share with you the issues and challenges we encountered and the actions that I have taken as the Presidential Assistant for Rehabilitation and Recovery. 11 months ago, the President offered me a job. Anyone with a heart that bleeds for the less fortunate and the downtrodden would not think even for a second to refuse. I know that feeling for sure because I was there. For one, I never bothered to ask the President what authority I would be given to have the task done. So, when I heard about the famous Pak Kuntoro, Indonesia's rehabilitation czar, having to spend all of 5 months to negotiate with his president for the extent of his powers and authority to rebuild Banda Aceh, Indonesia, from the ruins of the December 2004 tsunami, which he got in like absolute terms, my friends would ask me if I felt like a fool for not even asking our president for something quite similar. And I remember telling them, if it were a war mission, I would have definitely asked how much firepower and logistics were at my disposal before accepting. But since it was for a purely humanitarian task or cause, you and I will agree, such questions, much less demands, became irrelevant. At this point, I would like to clarify what PAR can do. I know PAR is a difficult concept to grasp since it is the first time this position was created. The name itself is hard to remember, but the real challenge for me was having been labeled a rehabilitation czar, which set expectations unrealistically high. Once and for all, I would like to set the record straight. I am not a czar. I have no implementing power. I have no powers to manage or hold funds. My only mandate is to coordinate and oversee rehabilitation efforts and to propose funding. The responsibility of rehabilitating 171 cities and municipalities with very limited authority makes the task even harder. But to this day, I still believe that a mere coordinator can make a difference. Initially, I received no budget allocation for an office and staff, but I was able to organize a ragtag team composed of 5 of my former Senate staff and a real estate development planner whom I requested to be appointed as undersecretary. I was able to muster a staff of 16 under government payroll. Fortunately, the USAID and the UNDP came to our aid and agreed to deploy more than 100 technical personnel to assist us. Despite the limited amount and nature of resources we could access from the government, I set out to deliver my mandate. I firmly believe then and now that what I lacked in authority, I would make up for through innovation and a lot of improvising without shortcuts to achieve quick results. We're holding office in a 248 square meter space inside the posh Bonifacio Global City in Taguig, albeit with Spartan-like fixtures. What gives? The rent is free, including water and power utilities. Most of the time, with free lunch. 3 days after I was sworn into office, I visited some of the hardest hit areas. Having discovered some bunkhouses with substandard construction materials, I immediately requested
our authorities to investigate these sites. This served as a deterrent to others who had similar designs. Later, I requested the Department of Trade and Industry to deputize the Philippine National Police Criminal Investigation and Detection Group to investigate and confiscate substandard construction materials. Because of this, several raids were carried out and substandard materials amounting to about 104 million pesos were seized. We facilitated an end-to-end value chain solution to millions of felled coconut trees by converting them to biomass. All these were mere sidelights to our principal job of coming up with a comprehensive recovery and rehabilitation plan. But we felt the urgency to rehabilitate right away. Thus, OPAR initiated a bottom-up approach even before the post-disaster needs assessment was concluded and presented. This involved recommending the direct downloading of funds by the Department of Interior and local government for projects like municipal buildings, public markets, and civic centers. We also asked the local government units to craft their own local rehabilitation and recovery plans to be aggregated to the national level. The process was effectively fast-tracked with the concurrence of the different clusters, resulting into a single comprehensive plan. On August 1, 2014, or less than 4 months since my office attained the necessary staffing requirements, we submitted the comprehensive rehabilitation and recovery plan to the President. What we've learned from our experience, though, was that some changes need to be made to quickly craft a needs assessment and recovery plan. Perhaps some critics are correct that we could have completed the master plan faster. But given the circumstances we had to deal with, I believe meticulous planning is worth the time spent for it. It seems that a careful planning approach was also followed in other countries. For instance, it took 11 months from disaster point before the master plan was responding to Hurricane Katrina was completed. 1 year on, the Yolanda corridor has changed from a state of catastrophe to a state of being alive and well. Numbers don't lie. I want to give you the numbers that are behind the changes that we see. I hope this would also answer the persistent question of how government funds were spent. As of this date, the Department of Budget and Management has already disbursed a total of 50,136,000,000 pesos to fund the programs, projects, and activities of various national government agencies. The NGAs, together with the concerned local government units, have already started to implement projects. Today, various infrastructure projects have been built with completion rates of up to 70% for some targets. To assist with livelihood recovery, immediate assistance was given, such as providing cash for building livelihood assets while ensuring that there are long-term sustainable forms of livelihood. In addition to continuing regular social service delivery, the government intensified its assistance by initiating medium to long-term projects that address health, education, and temporary shelter needs. While we saw the urgent need to provide permanent housing, unfortunately, this was an area where we experienced the most bottlenecks. It was difficult to find enough government lands that are in safe zones and suitable for a settlement. Based on the current timelines, 1,200 all rehabilitation projects, the government will disburse 80.31 billion pesos in 2015 and 35.92 billion in 2016. From the onset, we recognize this indispensable role of the private sector in achieving meaningful rehabilitation. cognizant of the difficulty of mobilizing government resources, Undersecretary Danilo Antonio and I engaged the non-government sector. Perhaps even the President realized that the non-government sector had the organization, the expertise, and the resources for quick response to disasters when he included in my mandate the power to call on members of the private sector to take part in the rehabilitation efforts. True enough, this laid the foundation for pursuing my strategy of harnessing the vast potential and the goodwill of the private sector. I am fully aware that some criticisms we received said that the government was passing on the responsibility for recovery to the private sector. We firmly believe that the public-private partnership is key to any post-disaster recovery efforts and must be institutionalized. In the same way that private sector synergy is recognized by Republic Act 6957, which authorizes the financing, construction, and operation of infrastructure projects by the private sector. As of date, all validated, ongoing, and completed projects by the private sector is estimated to amount to 12.98 billion pesos, while total project commitments are valued at 26.6 billion. That is why, when I hear critics say that nothing has changed and nothing has been done for Yolanda recovery, I think this unfairly ignores the great accomplishments made by the non-government sector. We have also made significant progress in engaging multilateral and bilateral agencies for Yolanda-related assistance. The Multi-Donor Trust Fund, an initiative of the Department of Finance and the Department of Budget and Management and the Department of Foreign Affairs, was meant to take in grants or loans from foreign governments, which now totals 2.9 billion pesos. Fund sources include the Asian Development Bank, the European Union, and the Department for International Development. Total grants from multilateral and bilateral agencies, which were coursed through other channels to include their own non-government organizations, now amount to 17.4 billion pesos. The bulk of this amount was disbursed for immediate response and relief work, and lately for actual recovery projects. Among our multilateral and bilateral partners are Japan International Cooperation Agency, or JICA, Korea International Cooperation Agency, German Development Bank, and GSIS, United States Agency for International Development, and United Nations agencies. We have noted recovery of local government units and sectors has depended on several factors. But I would like to highlight the factor relating to the attitude, political will, and initiative of local government executives. Take, for example, Tacloban City, a sui generis or in a class of its own, yet being treated by most as the yardstick of the rate of rehabilitation and recovery of the entire Yolanda corridor, which I believe should not be the case. Admittedly, its performance is below par. This is surprising because it has been the center of national and international aid agencies. Why is this so? In the early phase of rehabilitation, the mayor of Tacloban City approached me to ask for assistance in securing the advance release of their Internal Revenue Allotment, or IRA, to be used for recovery efforts. Immediately, I was able to secure the commitment of the Secretary of the Department of Budget for the release of the city's Internal Revenue Allotment, not for 3 months as requested, but for 6 months. Lo and behold, for reasons known only to him, he refused to accept what he had earlier urgently requested for. Contrary to claims that he has not received a single centavo from the national government, the city government received 6.109 billion pesos in projects, programs, and activities from several national government agencies to address Tacloban's needs for resettlement, infrastructure, livelihood. Valdez actually received from the Department of Interior and local government funds for the repairs of City Hall, public market, and civic center. We even discovered anti-government protesters and rallyists being ferried to and from mass action sites using a truck bus garage in the property of the Romualdez compound in Barangay 62A in Tacloban City. Just 2 days ago, while commemorating the first year anniversary of Yolanda, anti-government placards were seen stuck at the back of City Hall of Tacloban. Compare this attitude to the mayors of Tanawan and Javier, both in Leyte, Lawaan and Giwan in Eastern Samar, and the governors of Samar, Iloilo, Cebu, and Palawan, and many other local executives who, despite being either members of the political opposition or allies, but not in the so-called inner circle, were able to undertake significant accomplishments in their respective constituencies. Moving forward, I am calling on all local chief executives present here today to rise to the challenge. Put the interest of your constituents before any personal or political agenda you may have. Considering our lifespan is less than 20 months from now, we at OPAR are also focused on developing legacy systems that we can pass on to the next administration or even to generations after us. The same applies to the ad hoc OPAR. We therefore advocate the creation of a permanent agency that has appropriate authority and resources to address the weaknesses of our current office. We are looking at empathy, or the electronic management platform, accountability and transparency hub for Yolanda, to be adopted as the national monitoring tool of all government projects that can be viewed and scrutinized by the public. A virtual exercise of freedom of information and an example of transparency. While it is still a work in progress, empathy can now be accessed by the public. It is meant to track all rehabilitation projects from both the government and non-government sectors. It shows the funding and the status of projects. We are working to institutionalize the classification of areas as to their suitability for human settlement through science-based methodology and evidence. Along this undertaking, we are seeking to come up with a standard-based map for the whole country that should be used for various purposes: land use, plotting political boundaries, demographic-related mapping, and the like. We have also partnered with the Development Academy of the Philippines and the United States AID to develop a masteral course for the planning officers of all the local government units at the municipal and provincial levels in the Yolanda corridor. Finally, we shall document our experiences as a basis for formulating best practices in disaster management, risk reduction, and planning in a policy forum that will immediately follow my report. In the past 12 months, one of my most is that though the road ahead is full of pitfalls and corners, our journey is also one of hope and change. Every day, in my office, I see hard-working people ready to do what is necessary to help the survivors. Every time I go out on meetings, the people I meet continue to impress me with their dedication to help in the recovery process. Every time I visit an affected municipality and or barangay, I am immediately aware of the desire of the survivors to stand on their own and the grim determination and political will of the local executives to uplift the lives of the typhoon survivors among their constituents. I've heard the line, "Don't give us houses, give us livelihood so we can rebuild our lives," so many times that it has convinced me that the human spirit has triumphed. This gives me a lot of hope that in the coming months, you and I will see further improvement in the lives of the survivors. As a common refrain, bad things do happen in the world, like war, natural disasters, disease. But out of those situations always arise stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Let us learn from the list of our brethren.
Yan po ang naging talumpati ni Secretary Ping Lacson sa kasalukuyan nagaganap na forum. Dinipensahan ni Secretary Lacson ang naging usad ng mga rehabilitation programs ng pamahalaan. Hindi umano makatwiran ang mga kritiko na nagsasabing walang naging pagbabago at pagbangon sa mga lugar na sinalanta ng bagyong Yolanda. Ikinalungkot din ni Lacson ang patuloy na kritisismo na natatanggap ng pamahalaan mula sa sariling mga kababayan habang ang mga foreign observers anya na eksperto sa mga malalaking disasters ay pumupuri sa bilis ng pag-usad ng rehabilitasyon na isinasagawa ng pamahalaan. Unfair umano ang pagbase sa rehabilitation efforts ng pamahalaan base lamang sa mga nakikita sa Tacloban. Idinetalye rin nila diskubre ng ilang pabahay na gumamit ng substandard materials, kahirapang humanap ng government land para sa mga housing units at iba pa. Sinagot din ni Lacson ang katanungan kung paano ginamit ang pondo ng bayan para sa mga lugar na sinalanta ng bagyong Yolanda. Sa ngayon anya, mahigit 50 bilyong piso na ang inilabas ng Department of Budget and Management para sa mga proyekto gaya ng pangkabuhayan at infrastruktura. Dinipensahan din ni Lacson ang pakikipagtulungan ng pamahalaan sa pribadong sektor. Anya kinakailangan ng gobyerno ng tulong ng private corporation or private entity pag-rehabilitate nito sa area. Ni Lacson ang usapin na walang natanggap na pondo ang Tacloban mula sa national government. Isiniwalat niya na noong una ay humingi sa kanya ng tulong si Tacloban City Mayor Alfred Romualdez para mapabilis ang pondo, ang release ng pondo mula sa DBM. Ngunit sa huli ay bigla itong nagbago ng isip at tinanggihan ito. At binunyag pa ni Lacson na hinakot umano ng truck ng mga Romualdez ang protesters sa Tacloban noong Yolanda anniversary. Hinimok naman niya ang mga local government leaders na isantabi muna ang pamumulitika at unahin ang kapakanan ng mga Yolanda victims. At yan po ang aming naging paghahatid ng special coverage ng Multi-Stakeholders Policy Forum 1 year after Yolanda and the way forward. Kasama po ang Unit 3. Ako si Cathy San Gabriel. Magandang araw, Pilipinas.
Magandang tanghali, nagbabalik ang PTV Newsbreak. Dumating na sa Beijing, China si US President Barack Obama para sa APEC Summit ngayong 2014. Si Obama ay kabilang sa mga makakasama ni Pangulong Aquino sa pulong ng mga lider ng iba't ibang bansang kasapi nito. Samantala, sa harap ng mga Chief Executive Officer ng mga multinational companies, hinikayat ni Pangulong Aquino ang mga ito na samantalahin ang pagkakataon para makapaglagak ng puhunan sa Pilipinas. Simulaan niya ng kanyang administrasyon, ilang reforma na sa pagnenegosyo ang naipatupad tulad ng pagkakaroon ng one-stop shop sa pagpaparehistro ng mga negosyo. Inihiyag din ng Pangulong Aquino na kasalukuyang nililitis sa mga government officials dito sa Pilipinas na sangkot sa alegasyon ng katiwalian. Samantala, inaasahan namang mas lalakas pang ang ugnayan ng Pilipinas at China sa larangan ng kalakalan. Ito'y sa ilalim ng China's 5-year plan na pinagtibay ng dalawang bansa. Ayon kay Philippine Ambassador to China, Yolanda, kinikilala na magkabilang panig ang mas maraming oportunidad na mabubuo sa pamamagitan ng naturang plano at sa inisyatibo na rin ng kani-kanilang gobyerno. Dagdag pa ni Basilio, ang taon na ito ay isang magandang taon para sa business contact sa pagitan ng dalawang bansa. Noong March 14, 2011, nang i-endorso ng Kongreso ng China ang naturang 5-year plan. Sa iba pang balita, emosyonal na umalis sa Veterans Memorial Medical Center sa Quezon City si Pampanga Representative Gloria Macapagal Arroyo para dumalo sa libing ng kanyang namatay na apo sa Makati City. Alas 8 ng umaga nang umalis sa VMMC si Ginang Arroyo at alas 3 naman ng hapon inaasahang ibabalik ng ospital ang dating Pangulo. Gaya ng dati ay may mga pulis sa convoy ni Ginang Arroyo kasama na ang police ambulance at patrol car mula sa QCPD. Kung maalala, pinayagan ng Anti-Graft Court 5th Division ang mosyon ni Ginang Arroyo na makadalo sa libing ng kanyang 13-month-old na apo na si Jorge Alonso Hugo Arroyo Bernal na binawian ng buhay noong isang linggo dahil sa congenital heart disease. At yan po naman ang aming mga nakalap na balita at impormasyon para sa PTV Newsbreak. Ako po si Audrey Goriseta.
Magandang tanghali Pilipinas. Live mula sa Pag-asa Weather and Flood Forecasting Center, narito ang latest sa ating panahon. Ngayong Lunes, alamin natin ang pagtaya ng panahon sa mga pangunahing lungsod sa bansa. Simulan natin dito sa may Luzon. Naku, mababa na po dyan sa may Baguio City na may 14 to 23 degrees Celsius habang ang Puerto Princesa ay may 24 to 31 degrees Celsius. Punta naman tayo sa Visayas. Ang Iloilo at Bacolod ay parehong may 25 to 32 degrees Celsius at mababa naman sa may Tacloban na may 24 to 32 degrees Celsius. At punta naman tayo sa Mindanao, mataas na po dyan sa may Metro Davao na may 25 to 33 degrees Celsius at mababa naman sa may Cagayan de Oro na may 23 to 32 degrees Celsius. Samantala, weather systems this November, alamin sa aming pagbabalik.
Thanks. Ang package.
Ma'am, sabi ng Air 21 on the road na.
Ano te? Ang package.
Ma'am, sabi ng Air 21 na receive na.
Okay, very good.
Basta padala, sagot ka ng Air 21. May real-time delivery updates via text para worry-free ka.
Thanks. Ang package, napadala mo na?
Yes, ma'am. Sa Air 21.
Sa Air 21, sagot ko, padala mo.
O mga kababayan, syempre mas mabuti na maging handa sa kahit anumang panahong mararanasan. Kaya bilang inyong gabay, narito ang detalye ng general weather conditions ngayong November. Asahan po ang 2 hanggang 3 bilang ng bagyong maaaring manalasa sa ating area of responsibility. Syempre nandyan pa rin ang northeast monsoon o amihan na magbibigay sa atin ng lower temperatures sa mga susunod na linggo. Pag may northeast monsoon, posible rin ang pagkakaroon ng tail end of a cold front usually sa Luzon area pero minsan umaabot din po yan ng Visayas. At meron pa ring intertropical convergence zone pero more on the lower regions of the country na lamang. So yan po ang ating inaasahang weather systems this November. At yan ang latest mula dito sa Pag-asa. Manatiling nakatutok sa ating weather conditions sa pamamagitan ng Panahon TV Facebook at Twitter accounts. Antabayan na rin ang susunod na weather update ni Weather Buddy Jessie Basco mamaya sa News at 1. Ang update na ito ay hatid sa inyo ng Panahon TV Express kung saan walang pinipiling panahon ang pagbibigay impormasyon. Ako po ang inyong weather girl April Enerio. Magandang tanghali.
Crystal clear as day, my people will rise again. Someday soon, somehow, somewhere down the way, my people will rise again. My people, we will rise again. We will learn to spread our wings and fly again like an eagle to the distant dawn. Shallow lies for tomorrow. We will rise again. No more shattered hopes and no more tattered lives this time tomorrow. We will rise again. My people, we will rise. We will learn to spread our wings and fly again like an eagle to the distant dawn. From out the shadows of the past, we'll be flying free at last and rising with the morn. We will stand, we will rise again. And nothing, no one can take my dream from me. I won't let them, I won't let them deny. I won't for tomorrow. We will rise again. We will rise again. We will learn to spread our wings and fly
The Banawe Rice Terraces or Hagdan-Hagdang Palayan ng Banawe is a collective name for the Batad and Bangaan Rice Terraces in the Ifugao province. The rice paddies were carved into the mountains 2,000 years ago by ancestors of the Ifugao people who continue to farm the land traditionally to this day. Kaakibat sa pagpapahalaga sa yaman ng ating bayan.
Ang susunod na programa ay Rated G. Ito ay pwede sa lahat ng manonood.
Ang kahirapan ay hindi lamang kakulangan sa pera. Kasama nito ang hindi pagkamit ng mga pangunahing pangangailangan sa buhay. Isa na rito ang kalusugan. Kung kaya't hindi maikakailang ang mga pinakamahihirap na Pilipino, ay siya ring pinakanangangailangan ng mga programang pangkalusugan. Sintomas ng problemang ito ang napakaraming pumapanaw na ina at sanggol dahil sa maaga at sunod-sunod na panganganak.
Women will continue dying just because they wanted to give birth. Children will continually be orphaned because the mother died giving birth. 11 mothers will still die every day. And all the economic and poverty upliftment measures will be useless. Reproductive health is actually taking care of the totality of women and even children. It's a health measure as well as a measure for providing for better quality of life.
Ilang dekada ring naipit sa Kongreso ang RH Bill dahil sa pagtuligsa ng makapangyarihang simbahang Katoliko.
Very active yung lobby ng church against any family planning, reproductive health measure. Ibang legislators dati, yun nga, tinetrade off yung influence ng church sa influence ng mga tao at yung kung ano yung mas mahalaga, boto ba o yung kabutihan ng kanilang mga constituents. Si GMA, dati, sabi niya kay Congressman Lagman, sige, suportado kita. Pero yung pala, binulungan si Speaker Nograles na i-dribble mo lang. Sapagkat kailangan niya yung suporta ng mga obispo. So, hindi niya pinagalaw. That's where national leadership counts. Under si Pinoy, talagang lagtad ang suporta niya. Bagaman nung umpisa, medyo umiilag siya sa confronting the bishops. Pero nung banda huli, wala na siyang pakialam. At saka kailangan na ng ating bansa. Malaking tulog yon. Dahil yun nga, it emboldened the legislators. Siyempre, tumitingin pa rin sa national leadership.
But the other thing that it has done, it has emphasized that point, that there is a separation between church and state. The strength of the president in standing up to saying the people have wanted this, we as a secular state should give it, shows that the church must put itself in the place where it is. It cannot control the whole state. And I think this for the future is a very positive thing.
Nito lamang Abril, itinaguyod ng Korte Suprema ang legalidad ng reproductive health law. Tinanggap ito bilang hudyat ng Department of Health upang simulan na ang pangangalaga sa reproductive health rights ng mga ilaw ng tahanan. At nito ngang Hunyo, sa taunang health caravan ng DOH, nakapaloob na sa programa nila ang mga seminars ukol sa breastfeeding, nutrisyon, at pagsugpo sa maternal at child mortality. Binigyan ang mga sumali sa roadshow ng kalayaang mamili kung nais nilang makatanggap ng mga makabagong pamamaraan ng family planning.
Yung mga nabubuntis dahil nakalimutan uminom ng pills, o yung mga nabubuntis kasi hindi naman sila makapunta sa private doctor for the implant, then DOH comes into the rescue. The implants has actually been in the market, I think, for 5 or 6 years. But it was very expensive. But the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation entered into an agreement with UNFPA and the Department of Health in subsidizing these implants for the less fortunate mothers, yung mga hindi po kayang bilhin ito. That's why it's now affordable for the Filipino families. And we are training our rural health physicians and all government doctors to do this. Kasi po gusto ko po magpa-implant kasi gusto ko po ito muna para pumalagaan ko tapos hindi ko po siya mapabayaan.
Pag effective na ang ating family planning program, in fact, sure. Ang vision namin sabi nga sa Ingles, every child is a wanted child. Bawat bata ginusto ng magulang.
Ang pakikipaglaban para sa reproductive health rights ng mga kababaihan ay isang aspeto lamang ng mas malaking laban para sa kalusugang pangkalahatan o universal health care. Noong umupo ang Pangulo noong 2010, isa sa mga kinailangan niyang itama ay ang sistemang dinatnan niya sa PhilHealth.
Unfortunately, the way PhilHealth was implemented was such na ang mga ang mga mahihirap na yung pang gusto nating matulungan, ang hindi na i-enroll. Ang nangyari itong 15 years from 1995 to 2010 was such na maraming local government that said they could not afford their share. So ang nangyari, hindi na i-enroll yung mga mahihirap. When we took over in 2010, and President Aquino right away approved our recommendation na rather than sharing ng local at national government, let the national government assume that. And so we were able to enroll right away in 2011 what we call the poorest of the poor. In the poorest 20% of the population, or about 5.2 million poor families.
Upang maidagdag ang nasabing 5 milyong Pilipino sa PhilHealth, kinailangang gumawa ng paraan ng pamahalaan upang mapondohan ang nasabing adhikain. Kung kaya't noong taong 2012, ipinaglaban ng Pangulo ang pagpasa sa sin tax law o ang pagbubuwis sa mga kumpanyang gumagawa ng sigarilyo at alak. Dagdag pa rito ang naging direktiba ng Pangulo na ang 85 bahagi ng buwis ay tuwirang mapupunta sa Department of Health.
You know, it was only under this president that we were able to amend the excise tax on cigarette and liquor, or the so-called excise or the sin taxes. 16 na taon po, hindi magalaw-galaw itong hindi tama na pagbubuhis sa sigarilyo at alak. Dahilan po sa political will ng Pangulo ay naitulak itong pagbabago ng ating excise tax system, at dahilan po dyan ay nadagdagan ang ating kaban ng bayan mahigit sa 50 bilyong piso noong nakaraang 2013, at ito lahat po ay napunta sa health sector, sa ating mga district hospital, sa ating mga PhilHealth. Kaya sa ngayon, ang laki ng enrollment natin sa PhilHealth na libre sa mga mahihirap because of this law.
Dahil sa pagpasa ng sin tax law o RA 10351, nagkaroon ng malawakang reforma sa sistemang pangkalusugan ng Pilipinas. Tumaas ang budget ng DOH sa 102 bilyong piso sa taong 2015. Malayong-malayo sa dati nitong budget na 12.5 billion pesos lamang. Dahil sa dagdag na budget, bukod sa pagdami ng mga kasapi, maaari na ring sagutin ng PhilHealth ang mga malulubhang sakit na dati hindi kakayanin ng nasabing ahensya dahil sa kamahalan ng pagpapagamot.
Why did we use the word Z? Yung kasing Z is the last of our alphabet. That either causes death or are very serious, and we call that a group of diseases we call catastrophic diseases that not only causes death but very expensive. So nandun yung ating mga heart diseases, cancer, stroke, no?
Ikinuwento sa amin ni Ginang Barbie Bossing ang karanasan ng kanyang anak bilang isa sa pinakaunang beneficiary ng Z Benefits Program.
Bali, nung 4 months siya, doon ko nalaman na may sakit pala siya sa puso. Tetralogy of Fallot. Ang ibig sabihin ay parang yung puso niya, parang 4 yung diferensya. 4 yung kailangan ayusin. Kailangan operahan na siya agad-agad. Pero kasi dahil malaki talaga yung operation niya, nag-aano na kami ng, kailangan makapag-ipon muna kami ng pera. Kami yung unang naka-avail nung say benefits na covered yung TOF na case. Sasagutin daw lahat ng PhilHealth. Nung inoperahan siya, wala na kami binayaran. PhilHealth na talaga yung sumagot lahat. Parang almost 1 million yata. Meron pa rin akong mga biniling gamot, pero ni-refund din sa akin. After ng operation niya, nag-aktibong-aktibo na siya ngayon, maglaro, lahat kaya na niya, hindi katulad dati. Konti lang, pagod na.
Bukod sa pagpapabuti sa sistema ng PhilHealth, siniguro rin ng DOH na masimulan na ang pagsasaayos ng lahat ng mga provincial at government hospitals sa buong Pilipinas. Isa sa mga ospital na ito, ang Caraga Regional Hospital sa lalawigan ng Surigao del Norte.
Sa 2013, meron tayong 80 million worth of infrastructure project na na-implement na po. By 2014, we also have here a worth of 50 million na infrastructure project, the construction of our new main building. Well, marami kaming natanggap na mga life-saving, life-sustaining na mga equipments. Yung incubator natin at saka yung ventilator na karamihan noon, inire-refer pa natin sa mga private hospitals. Pero ngayon, capable na kami, na-upgrade namin yung implementation of services, lalo na sa ating mga mahihirap na kababayan.
Ipinag-utos na rin ng DOH sa lahat ng government hospitals na agad nang i-enroll ang mga pinakamahihirap na pasyente sa ilalim ng point of care program. Bunga ng programang ito, wala nang babayaran ang mga sponsored PhilHealth members kapag sila'y na-ospital.
Yung mga patients namin, especially those PhilHealth members, hindi na sila nag-expend ng kahit single centavo dahil ang hospital na mismo ang nag-cater ng mga medical needs nila. So by the time na nag-discharge sila, lahat-lahat ng mga expenses nila sa hospitalization, ang PhilHealth na rin po ang nagre-reimburse.
Yun ang patakaran nila dito pag mayroon kang PhilHealth. Pag nalaman nila yun na mayroon kami ng ganun, hindi kami pabayaran nila sa ospital.
This is really a major national health reform that was undertaken by President Aquino.
Sa pagpasa ng Reproductive Health Law, Syntax Law, at Revised PhilHealth Law, ang Pilipinas ngayon ay kabilang nasa hanay ng mga first world countries na sinasagot ng buo ang pangangalaga sa kalusugan ng kanilang mga pinakamahihirap na mamamayan mula kapanganakan hanggang sa pagtanda. Patunay lamang na hindi manhid ang pamahalaan sa mga suliraning kinakaharap ng taong bayan. Bagkus, taos-puso ang pagkalinga nito upang maramdaman ng bawat Pilipino ang panatag na pamumuhay dulot ng kalusugang pangkalahatan.
Well, the legacy of formulating policies that are difficult to push but which was necessary for the nation to progress. The political will is a legacy that he can be proud of and live there.
I think this president is making some major social reforms. So I think these reforms go beyond just the reforms themselves to indicating a society that is considerably changed from what it was before.
Sana nakatulog ka, nakakain ka, kasi kami hindi.
Gusto lang namin marinig. Ba't nga naisip na gawin yung ganun sa anak ko?
There are so many transgender killings in the Philippines. They're not new.
they've been happening for decades.
Bakla ka man, tomboy ka man, lalaki ka man, babae ka, kailangan bigyan mo ng dahilan ang tao para